Hello and welcome to Transurf and Chill on TransurfingTV. This is the show where I'm going to be interviewing Renee Garcia about literally every single concept in reality transurfing and breaking it all down for you. Really excited to be bringing the show to you all, so without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, the queen of transurfing, Renee Garcia. How are you today?
I'm doing pretty good. How are you doing, Owen?
Doing fantastic. Good energy. Been a great day.
Awesome. Sounds good. So you ready to tackle this one?
Yeah, let's do it. Let's talk about the flow of variations.
Yeah, or the alternatives flow. What translation does Vadim say the flow of variations? Is that the first book?
I think that's the first book, right? Yeah, and it's the alternatives flow in the second. In
the second book, yeah. So I know my manual that I've created, I've got concepts explained from, cliff notes I've taken from the first book, and then ones I've taken from the space of variations. The steps 1 through 5. So, just to make sure that we're, everybody knows we're talking about the same thing, the alternatives flow and the, what was the one you just said? The alternatives flow and the flow of variations. Flow of variations, right. So same thing. So cool. Where do we start with this one? Well, I'll start off by saying that this is hands down, without a doubt, my absolute favorite concept of the whole book. Yeah. Because my previous life, pre-transurfing, I was not doing this one at all.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
So it was my reality was constantly being challenged by me, by me, because I was overcomplicating things. I was going after things in a contrived fashion. I was going after things that weren't coming easy to me. I would force a lot of stuff, force ideas that I had about how my reality performed or what I wanted to get, or forcing relationships, instead of just taking a cue from my reality that it was time to move on,
I can relate. I can so relate. Yeah, absolutely. I've challenged the world a lot. Oh no, well, every single sign told me what I needed to do, and I just completely ignored it. And it's happened to me, even up to and including pretty recently. I've done it just because I'm so stubborn, right? In a way, it's a virtue, right? You're strong-willed, but at the same time, it's what you're going up against, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah. And here's the positive spin on that. So you saying that, you've battled with your reality, right? You've gone to the mat with your reality, and you tried to force stuff and, place too much importance or want to see things go your way. And there's actually a real upswing if you've been doing that, in your life. And that is that, now that behaviors like that do not get you what you want, right? You have learned the hard way. You know now what not to do, right? So I lived like that until I was 35 years old, and me not going with the alternatives flow, right? Me doing the exact opposite, fighting with the alternatives flow until I was 35 years old. I won't go into it, in detail, but it broke me, right? I tried so hard to force certain aspects of my reality to conform to my belief system that it actually broke me, and I left my old life before I found transurfing. I left very, very humbled, right? That obviously the way that I had been doing things was not the way, right? Was not the way. If you are struggling with your energy levels, right? If you are in a toxic relationship or toxic relationships that aren't going anywhere, if you're unhappy with your job, right? Or how you make money in your reality, if you aren't accepting of yourself, right? If you're highlighting inadequacies about who you are, or having any negative thoughts about yourself, these are just to name a few. These are signs that you're not going with the flow, right? I allow myself to be me now. And it's not because like I really like myself, I mean, I value myself the same amount that any normal person does. I don't have like an abundance of really, really good thoughts about myself. I just know that I don't want to go against the flow. And for me, that means accepting myself and accepting who I am as a person, what I have to offer, my environment, my shortcomings, right? That has a lot to do with it as well. If you're overly focused on, some fucked up part of who you are, right? It's just you're missing it, right? You got to relax into it and just sort of go with it. Everybody's got their parts about them that they don't like, right? That's part of going with the flow, in my opinion. And I think that I have found success now because I have just stopped and allowed, and I'm not just talking about financial success, I mean success, just personal success, is I've stopped fighting with myself. I've stopped fighting with my reality. I've stopped fighting with my environment. I've stopped fighting with others. I'm in a new business now, and like, it's been a long time since I've worked with people. I'm in 2 new businesses that it's been a long time, that 2 new things, the Transurfing TV that, we're doing, Owen, and my real estate gig. There's lots of people around me. I'm not used to it. And part of me, at times when people are like saying, oh, well, we're going to do it this way, there is a very, very, very small part of me, but it's still there, that wants to go, no, I want to do it my way. And then I stop and I go, nope, your way has proven to be inefficient and not work. And when you relax and let others have their way and give into the flow, let it flow, then you get good stuff, right? Then you get good stuff. And I remind myself of that like 20 times a day, I mean, it's crazy, but I do. When I relax and I don't try to enforce my will on my reality, I get good stuff, and my energy levels are higher. Because who the fuck wants to spend their days like trying to control other people? I mean, I used to do that, and I'm tired of it, and I found a better way, and that's where I'm at,
Yeah, I totally know what you mean, especially like in a creative way. It's like I've played in a lot of bands, especially when I was younger, and recently, a couple of years ago, like this is right around the time I found Transurfing. My drummer had a kid, and so our band broke up. And, like old me would have just lost his mind, and that's not something to get upset about. That's something to celebrate. That's a new life. I should be happy for people when they do, when they're happy. But it's like, I would literally, and even before that was even worse. Like I would like think about what, the other people in the band should play at certain parts, and like want to like micromanage and force them to do, a certain, series of notes or like whatever in this particular part of the song, or like it should, because it's in my head this way, then everyone else should conform to that. And it's like, that is so the opposite, because once I learned how to let go of that creative control, because like the last band that I was in turned out being a lot better than the band I was in before, because I didn't let I didn't like trip, and I didn't like worry about like, if you want to play, those couple of notes there, that's fine. I'm not going to get bent out of shape and constrict, myself because, you played something that in my head, isn't it didn't, I didn't like or whatever. And like, so
Yeah.
I learned, I learned a lot by doing that. And so like, instead of like freaking out or whatever, I just be like, you know what? That's cool. I can live with that. And then
Yeah.
it actually improved everyone's morale and everyone's energy went up. And so everyone became more productive and invested in the project.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that is an amazing example right there, And that's it in a nutshell. It's like we all have our ideas, We all have these beliefs that we've built in our mind, like, I've built up beliefs about myself that I know better in regards to certain things. And, it may very well be fact that I do know better, right? But that is completely irrelevant here. It doesn't matter if I know better. What matters is my willingness to let go and let my reality show me the way, right? And I have practical confirmation from following this book that if I do that, when I do that, things are much better for me. Now, there are parts about this book that I still, am trying to understand. My level of understanding of this book is high. It's definitely not going to be like Vadim's level, right? This one baffles me. Right? I mean, I know fundamentally why this concept works, right? Because it's just not possible. It's just not possible to realize your true self and achieve your own personal goals when you're not going with the flow. Like it, you might get close, you might, You might figure something out, but it's just, I don't know. There's something about this concept that still eludes me somewhat of why exactly this works, but it's almost like it doesn't even matter.
It doesn't. I don't think you can understand this concept. Like, there's too many variables, right? There's too many variations of the flow, and we as human beings, we want to wrap our minds around everything and understand everything, but you can't understand everything, like it's literally trying to understand everything. Like, well, if this thing happens and then it goes this way and then it's like that and then this plays out and blah, 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 blah. And I can't tell you how many times I've gotten myself in a bad position because I thought things were going to go a certain way. Like, I thought I needed to, direct the flow, right? Where I'm like, well, I'm going to call so-and-so and then they're going to, talk to this guy and then he's going to ask me to do this thing and then, blah, 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 blah. And so in my mind, like, any of the goals that I've reached, I've never reached the goal in the way that I thought I would reach the goal.
Oh my God. When you said that just now, something clicked. The reason that's amazing, you just answered my question in what you said. The reason that this concept works, going with the flow, is because when you try to control, you are creating, via importance, you are creating excess potential, right? And balancing forces come in and ruin shit. That's why this works. That's why this works. Because exactly what you just described. When you try to control stuff, you have a built-up idea of where you see this going and why, or what you want to see happen. And there it is. Excess potential, and then balancing forces come in. So when you just go with the flow, right? It's like, okay, what does reality have to give me? Right? What does reality want to show? What way is reality pointing me in? And this is when we get into, and this is kind of like an under talked about concept in transurfing, but signs,
Yes, exactly.
Mm-hmm. We don't talk about signs a lot. It's not a huge topic in the transurfing community, but if you are really, really dialed into your reality, right? You're really dialed into your reality. You're not going to do what we just talked about doing, right? Trying to control stuff, building excess potential and balancing forces coming in and wrecking shit. You have the opportunity then, going with the flow. You're just going to let your reality show you the way. Look for those signs. Those. I think your friend, what was your friend's name? The comedian gal.
Oh, Jessa.
Now she's got an amazing. And everybody listen to Jessa's interview with Owen when it comes out, because she has an amazing connection with signs, right?
Yeah, she's unreal. Yeah, she did like the rando knot, which I also did recently. And not to interrupt you, but like I think this is why this particular thing, the signs in particular, are the reason why there are simple solutions to complex problems.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Your reality, your environment has a lot more information and variables that your mind can think of.
Mm-hmm. That's exactly right. You can't fathom all of the potential outcomes.
Exactly. You can't fathom all the potential outcomes, and our minds are pretty limited, right? They're just a construct, so to speak, of what experiences we've had or what thoughts we hold on to or whatever, right? But the space of variations being infinite in nature, right? And especially like just your immediate environment, right? You have a lot of options and variables, a lot more than you could ever personally have. So if you can let go, right? If you can truly learn to let go, and this is something that, again, this is why this is my favorite concept. I love me some flow of variations.
I love hearing you say, I love me some, and just fill in the blank. Like it's funny, no matter, but I love this too, because I fought, like, it's so interesting. Yeah, we both have this in common. Just
yeah. I mean, because I never knew, like, I never knew it could be this easy.
Right. No, it doesn't make sense, because your mind wants to make things complicated, right? And so like it's thinking of all these things and all this, like this advanced puzzle that you've got to put together. And then the world's just like standing there waiting, like tapping its foot, like whenever you're done,
Exactly. Whenever you're done, I got a few other options for you, you fucking idiot.
Yeah, yeah, you're making this 10 times harder.
Yeah.
Than it actually
Exactly. And what's so funny is, like, I look at people like Kale and Trevor. If you guys haven't checked out their videos, go ahead and check them out. They're some amazing, like, they're younger people, and they got this stuff. And I'm thinking, there's a slight little tinge of envy there. 'Cause I'm like, oh man, what if I had found transurfing when I was 20 years old?
Fucking millennials.
Oh my God. I'm like, you are so lucky. I look at Kale.
Dude, Kale's
and I'm like,
mind blowing. Like, he was in Atlanta. I was supposed to go and meet him, and then something happened. We weren't able to meet. And then the next day I talked to him. He was like, oh, I'm in Houston, Texas now. Like, he's literally living that life,
Yeah, he's just flying all over the place. He's just like going like, oh no, this isn't for me anymore. See ya. Then he jumps over to something else. I mean, talk about going with the flow of variations, And yeah, I mean, I'm not, I'm fortunate, right? I still found it at 35. But could you imagine, like what could have? I mean, pendulums alone. Right? Pendulums alone. I would never have let some of the pendulums into my life that I did, if I had this knowledge when I was 20. Like, I mean, my whole thing would have played out entirely differently. I'm glad it played out the way that it did. Don't get me wrong. But if you're younger right now, and you're listening to this, right? If you're in your early 20s or your mid 20s or your late 20s, and you haven't been beating your head against a wall for 20 years, right? As an adult, like, if you could take one concept from this, from the book and implement it into your life, I would suggest this one. Do not fight shit ever. If something is proving itself challenging beyond what seems reasonable, right? If you're arguing with a boyfriend or a girlfriend every day, it's time to go, right? You are not going with the flow. Your reality is trying to tell you something and you're not listening. If you already feel contempt doing what you do for money, if you are in some situation and you feel like you're having to grind it out every day, no, turn around. And like Vadim says, the best solution to your problem is probably the most obvious and the easiest thing close to you, closest to you. So the analogy that I like to use is, and I can't remember if Vadim uses this in the book or not. Sometimes I make up these analogies and I think that like I read them in the book and then I'm like, oh no, that was mine, or I'm saying something and it was actually in the book. So I get confused. So bear with me if you guys have heard this one. But the analogy that I like to that I like to envision here is that fly in the house that's banging against the wall and the window's open right next to it.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, he does talk about that. He's like, he's hitting his head on the pane of glass, but the window beside that glass, is
or it's open and he's banging it on the top and he could just fly a little lower and go out. Yeah. So that is like, that's it, right? Your window for any situation you're in right now, any situation that you do not like in your reality, there is an open window right next to you, right? And you are banging your little fly head on the glass, right? Yeah. And that's what I was doing for years and years and years. I was banging my head so hard, Right. And finally, I flew out the window, I flew out the window. It was like I flew out the window because I realized I couldn't do it anymore with the trying to control things. I just couldn't do it. Like I didn't want to go on if I had to keep living like that. I really didn't want to go on.
It causes so much stress. I mean, that's why people get, like ulcers and have, and get sick early in life,
Yeah. I mean, I had an ulcer. I had a bleeding ulcer when I was 25 years old because I got myself into a business that was super, super stressful. And I was stressed out every day. And I remember I was getting ready to do a trade show, and leading up to the trade show, weeks leading up to the trade show, I was banging my head against that window, and finally I get to the trade show and my stomach is hurting so bad. And finally I went to the doctor when I got home. He's like, you got an ulcer. I was like 25 years old and I've got an ulcer. Like, that's insane. So yeah, you're right. I mean, when a person's health is a very good indicator if they're going with the flow or not,
Absolutely.
I mean, yeah. If you're achy, if you're, beyond anything reasonable, obviously, if you got, when I was in my early 30s, I started, in the shower, I would see my hair coming out more. Like, oh my God, what's going on? And finally I went to see a hair specialist and they were like, oh, there's nothing wrong with you. It's probably just stress.
Right.
I was like, I'm not stressed.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So
absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, your body's going to tell you if you're not going with the flow.
Yeah, I did the same. I did the same thing. I mean, even doing music, and like I got good at music through just sheer will. But my entire life, like I knew, or if I would have paid attention to the signs, I would have gone a completely different direction. But I want to say to the people who are not in their 20s, like lucky you 20s people, don't squander it. Enjoy it. I'd love to have more time, but for everybody who's 40 or 50 or 60 or whatever, it's not too late. You can still forward to the past. And that's kind of where I'm at right now. It's like, I'm finally now taking the steps that had I actually acknowledged the signs and gone down that path, then, I would have gone a different direction than what I had. But I'm going a different direction, and that can kind of, I think, meet in the middle too, somewhere where you can live in a really cool reality, and you've picked up some other skills, through all of this fighting and torture and and stress and all of that kind of stuff. If you can just relax now and be honest with yourself, what is it that you do want? What is it that the world's pushing you toward, or opportunities that are giving, and then look for those signs.
Well, and here's the thing. So I'm going to, after I make this next statement, I'm going to read, I know a lot of what we've been doing has just been us talking, but I'm actually going to read 4 points from the summary in my manual, because I think that they're valuable and I just want to state them. But what I wanted to say is, and I say this a lot to people that have taken transurfing lessons with me, is when you are focused, when you are overly focused on your own agenda, or you're putting your will out there that you need to see something happen in a specific way, right? You are focusing way too intently on a very, very, very narrowed field of information, so to speak. You are essentially taking like 1% of what you can see, and you're narrowing your focal point down to that 1%, and you are not able to see all the other options in your reality, like at all. Like you can't see them because you're blinding yourself with what it is you think you need to be doing, right? What it is you have to have, or that relationship that you have to have, right? So it's like, putting blinders on to your reality. It really is. It's like putting blinders on. When you have inner and outer importance running you have blinders on in your reality. And there's no, there's no way that you can do both, right? You can't see what it is you want to see and all the options that are available to you as well. It just doesn't work like that, So the 4 points that I want to read from my manual here. 1, paths of least resistance are organized into separate streams. Okay. 2, streams in the alternatives flow, or the space of variations, contain the solutions to all of our problems. I'm a firm believer in this now, right? I couldn't find the solutions to my problems, right, on my own. But when I turned to my reality or to my environment, they offer me all the solutions. My environment offers me all the solutions, because it has a lot more information than I do, right, than my narrowed mind does. 3, inner and outer importance jolts the mind out of optimal streams. This is so valuable, This point here is so valuable. When you place inner importance on something, I'm an important person, or I need to achieve this, or I need, or outer importance, you need to see somebody else do something, you need to see somebody else, a romantic interest, give you something the way that you need to get it, or whatever, it's going to jolt your mind out of an optimal stream of having answers or carrying opportunities, right? Or whatever it is. It's another way of saying, if you're trying to force something, you're just not going to be on that track where a lot of cool things actually exist that are waiting for you. And then 4, everything works out much more simply than you think. Yield to this simplicity. We overcomplicate things in our minds as human beings. If overthinking got us what it is that we want, why everybody overthinks and a lot of people are empty and don't have what they want? So Transurfing's offering an alternative option here, right? Go with the flow. Yeah, it couldn't be any more clear. So the first one, paths of least resistance. Could you say that one again? Paths of least resistance are organized into separate streams. Okay. So what he means is this. Going with the flow does not just mean traveling down one stream, right? Because if you travel down one stream and you're like, nope, this is the stream I'm on, and I'm going to go with the flow of it, right? You're then doing the same thing as putting the blinders on. You know what I'm saying? You have to offer yourself the ability to travel around to different streams, right? So like me with my businesses, a lot of why I'm successful with my businesses is because I've implemented this one thing, paths of least resistance, or organized into streams. So if one of my businesses isn't making money, then I just move over to the other one and I go down that stream for a little while. And then if I get a couple emails about one of my other businesses, I'm like, oh, maybe that one's kicking off. I go over there and then I travel down that one for a little bit. But I give myself options, separate streams that I can travel around to. Because if I just go, oh, well, I'm going to travel down the stream of this one business, then I'm closing myself off to the other streams available that also have stuff to offer me. So what I do is I just switch around. I just move around. And sometimes new ones come in, right? Somebody will say something to me. Hey, have you ever heard of blah, 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 blah? People are making money doing it, like the real estate thing, right? So the real estate thing, this is a perfect example. When I moved to Modesto, where I live, the real estate agent that I hooked up with off of Zillow, off the internet, who, showed me 13 houses in one day. God bless her heart. I was not the ideal client. So she showed me a bunch of houses, and I ended up buying one, and I negotiated this killer deal. Right? I mean, it was amazing what I did. And I even patted myself on the back afterwards. I was like, oh, girl, you just bought a house at a really good price. I was so happy about it. And she said to me, have you ever thought about being in the real estate business? And I said, I've heard, I've thought about it a little bit here and there, but I've never really given it proper consideration. So I kind of just let it go. And then like a year and a half later, she texts me and she said, now, I'm almost 40 years old. It's not like I'm a young kid, right? Like that a lot of people my age don't just take up new careers at this stage in life. But she texted me and she said, hey, Renee, I just wanted to let you know that I started a study group at my real estate office. And I was wondering if you wanted to get your real estate license. And if you did, I would coach you through the whole thing from start to finish. And you could come to study group once a week and I'll help you get your license. Okay, so this is a perfect example of what this summary point means. That was the path of least resistance at that, and it just so happened that I was looking for something new at that point. That my other things, I was like, maybe one wasn't necessarily going and one I was a little tired of doing. I wasn't feeling heart and mind coordination, so then she appeared and said this thing and I was just like, perfect. There it goes, right? But I didn't do what my mind would have done 5 years ago, which is say, oh no, I don't need anything else. I'm trying to make these other things work. You know what I'm saying? I went, there it goes. My reality showing me the way. Right? So I jumped in and, 4 months later, I had my real estate license and now, not even 2 months in after having my license, I have 4 houses in escrow. Right? So my reality knew how I could have some success. I just had to listen to it. So again, paths of least resistance are organized into separate streams.
Right on.
Right?
Yeah, that's great too, because you can it's like task switching too. Like if you get too overwhelmed or stressed out when you're working on one particular project, I've done this sort of naturally, is have multiple irons in the fire, not too many, but 3 to 4, 2 to 3, whatever. And if I get overwhelmed or stressed out about one or something's not taking or whatever, and instead of compulsively freaking out about that, then I can just move to another project, and it's like, okay, well now I also forget and release importance of the other project that I was working on, that I was starting to get compulsive about and neurotic about, and then I do the other one, and then that other one sort of naturally starts to develop and unfold on its own.
Absolutely. You touched on a super, super valuable point. And I've told a lot of people this. Having multiple options or being able to move around to separate streams means that you don't have to place importance on any particular thing that you're doing. It lessens importance. It really, really does. Giving yourself more options always takes pressure off of you in other areas. So do lots of stuff and do different things, right? Don't just do lots of things, do different things. Like do things that, I think a lot of people are kind of like, wow, you were doing this and now you're doing this. Like, where'd that come from? And it's like, I just like to give myself lots of options. I just like to give myself lots of options, lots of variety and variables, and it just works. It works for me, at least.
Yeah. And I think those signs are really helpful too. Can we talk about that a little bit? Because I remember at one point in the book, he's talking about how like you can take signs that you overhear, right? And that are kind of more subtle cues, but not necessarily overt advice, especially unsolicited advice, like, maybe from somebody who wants you to do a certain thing with your life or something like that is not a sign.
Yeah. I mean, signs to me come in the form of this. When I overhear something or I see something, right? If I have that little like kind of fluttery feeling in my heart, like something just got triggered, like I've had it at weird times too, where it doesn't necessarily make sense, and the sign maybe wouldn't even be particularly perceived as positive. Like I remember once. I was walking with my grandfather. They live up in rural Oregon, and we go on walks every morning. And I remember one time we were walking, and this big crow flew across the road out of nowhere, landed right in front of us, and like squawked, like ah! And we both stopped, and my grandfather was like, oh, that's interesting, like, I wonder why he's doing that. And I mean, it was kind of bizarre, right? Oh, I'll tell you a really weird one. So anyway, that was the beginning of the wave of fortune for me, a wave of fortune. I mean, it was really weird. Like, you wouldn't think a black crow, but it just triggered something in my mind that made me feel something, and it made me sort of resonate in a frequency that my reality agreed with, and it started a wave of fortune. I don't know how to explain it, so signs can be anything. You just have to feel a connection. So I'll tell you this one sign that was just outrageous. It's super weird. So I was in our secret location with Dr. Salah, because we can't tell people where we film these seminars. He wants me to keep it a secret. So I'm in the secret location, and after one of the seminars, he asks us, me and a few of the girls there, assistants, if we wanted to go for a drive up into the countryside. So we get into this car and we're driving up this street. We're not quite out of town yet. We're just at the border of town. And standing in the middle of the road is a fox. And Dr. Salah stops the car, and the fox comes over to I'm sitting in the back passenger seat to the left, comes over to my window, and is just standing there looking at me. And he looks like he's going to jump into the car, like he's gearing to jump. And I was screaming, go drive. I don't want him to jump in the car, So Salah drives, And we all we get up a little ahead of the fox, and Salah pulls the car over, and we get out, and the fox comes right up to us. I actually have a video of this on my Instagram. It was pretty amazing. I pulled out my camera and I started recording it, and the fox was coming like literally right up to us. Both Salah and I almost touched it, and after we had our fun, like, you know, just reveling at this fox just being so close, we get into the car, and I'm not kidding you, this fox ran after the car for almost a mile up the road. It was so weird. I mean, it was so weird. Well, you know, I interpreted that as I'm around such amazing energy that even the animals are attracted, right? That our energy was so cool or whatever. So something was going on there that even the fox was like, I want to get in on this deal, right? And after that, I kind of knew what it felt like to be in good company. You know what I'm saying? Like, I thought this is what I want to experience when I'm with other human beings, like being social, right? I want to feel a good energy around that, like even animals want to walk up to us. And I know that sounds weird, but like that's just how I interpreted the situation. So again, you can interpret it any way. It's like what we're saying about the black cat crossing your path. You know, it's if you believe that. So if you see a sign and it resonates with you and it does something for you and it sort of shows you the way, then it's the right way, right? And then it's the right way because that's what your interpretation of it is, and that's going to be how you connect with it or resonate with it, right? I mean, is this making sense?
It absolutely makes sense. Yeah. So that whole randonaught thing is like, it's an interesting example of something like you're kind of looking for signs if you're doing something like that. So what it is it's like, it's kind of like, do you know what Pokemon Go is? It's kind of like Pokemon Go, but for like woke people, right? Like it's like you get these attractors, they're called, on your phone that generate random locations for you. Like, so basically, you know, you can kind of customize the experience, but the way I did it was I went back to the house that I grew up in Douglasville, Georgia, and the place was just a wreck. It looked awful, but it was the same, like they hadn't painted or anything. And so like the first thing I did was I generated the first attractor point. And so what it does is it gives you this random point, and it's kind of like, and I might butcher this a little bit, but I think the point of it is to kind of challenge predestination, determinism, right?
Got it.
To see if like you can wind up going to a place that you would ordinarily have no reason to be in, right? So in this like flow of variations or causes and effects that I would have never necessarily wound up in any of these three different places. So the first place that I went to was like this park that I grew up in, and like there was a specific point, and I stood there and I looked around and I noticed that like the playground was missing. It was completely gone. And so like then I went to this other place, and it was this shed in the middle of nowhere. I did a lot of trespassing. So just a word, you know, like if you guys are doing this, just keep in mind, be careful out there. But I went to this shed and there was this random shed in the woods that was the second place that I went to. And it was a white shed, and it freaked me out, man, because like I had chills as soon as I walked up to it. I was like, oh my God, you know, I'm looking at my phone and I'm like, that's definitely the place. And then I look at the door and the lock is open.
Oh, wow.
Of the thing. And my good friend Ben, I was like, I sent him a Marco Polo video message because just keeping him up to date, because he's like, we're really close and we send video messages, really weird video messages and stuff back and forth. And he sent me one back because I was like kind of just showing him what I was doing. And he was like, dude, worst advice ever, but you got to go in that shed. Honestly, at the time I was thinking he's about to say worst advice ever, but don't go in that shed. But yeah, so I go in there and I look around, and there's all these just old toys, and the roof of the, there were some creepy ones and some other ones. I'm not a thief. I don't believe in stealing, but it's just like in the middle of nowhere. I took like
you had to take
the
one
that kind of, Yeah, I took one,
Yeah.
like, and you know, and the roof was completely collapsed out of this,
Oh, wow.
this shed too, which was kind of interesting. And then the third attractor point, like you go to the first one and then you do a random another one and then you do a random another one. I just did 3, and the third one was this like open, beautiful like field just kind of off the side of the road.
Wow.
And all these places are places where in Douglasville, Georgia, where I grew up, which I have like no reason to be at all anyway, because I don't really have friends there either. But then I wound up in this like, you know, just meadow, this beautiful meadow.
Wow.
And so I had my own, it was crazy. So then I kind of put together my own narrative for it, you know, because I mean, we can kind of customize our narrative too, you know, we can decide.
Yeah.
I think to an extent, but it was pretty cool. It was an interesting.
What's it called?
It's called Randonaut.
Randonaut.
So you actually use the Telegram app, and then you download a bot in the Telegram app that's called, I can't remember what it's called, but if you look it up on Reddit or anything, you can check.
I'm going to
out
do
that
it because
way.
I live in my hometown now. I moved back, you know, so
Yeah.
I live in my hometown, and I have to say, like, I experience, you know, stuff like Randonaut every day where I end up in places and I'm like, oh man, I remember when I was like a messed up teenager, like getting drunk in this church parking lot, you know, like, and it's super weird. Like I'll drive by and like all of a sudden, you know, talk about forward to the past, you know.
Yeah, dude,
yeah.
it's
Oh
trippy.
yeah, coming back and being on different tracks. And I think that's probably why what you're talking about is cool and people are doing it, is because they're layering, especially if you're in a place that has meaning to you or had meaning to you, right? You're layering your new track on your old track a little bit.
Oh, that's cool. I didn't even think about that.
That's what it sounds like. And it's kind of weird, you know?
Yeah, it's really weird. Yeah, I learned of it from Jessa Reed, who you mentioned earlier, and like her story's great because she's talking about how like whenever she's like, because she goes into this like sort of depression thing, and to her it's like this windowless room.
Yeah.
And then during her randonaut, like she winds up in LA somewhere at this house that's like has no windows or doors, and she's just like, what the hell?
Wow.
Like that can't even be, you know, possible. And she's like dealing with a breakup, and so looking for kind of signs about that, and it's taken her on this path, on this I guess stream of like really understanding codependency, and that's what she's working on a lot now with her podcast as well, and doing the alien school episodes and stuff.
Awesome.
So yeah, I learned of it from her, and like it was a really, really invigorating experience.
Oh, I'm gonna do
because
it.
like the whole time, you know, your heart's just like pounding out of your chest because you're like, what's this gonna be? I mean, you can't set up a more like exciting, you know, adventure.
Oh,
for
wow.
yourself.
That's cool. Yeah. I'm going to definitely do it. That sounds like a lot of fun. And I think for anybody out there that's actively transurfing, man, like who know, you know, if you listen to this, session, when we're talking about alternatives flow, and then you go and do Randonaut, like that's, I mean, yeah.
I'm going to post my Randonaut videos on my Patreon too. So anybody who's listening to this and you want to see it, then you can go on my Patreon and watch it. If you want
That's
to.
awesome. Awesome. Yeah. And like, I think this is a good place to leave it. Go do Randonaut, everyone, and live your actual life like you're playing Randonaut.
Yes. Give in. Don't fight the flow of variations. Stop trying to figure out how things are going to work out, because you cannot fathom how it's going to work out. There's too much information in the space of alternatives for your mind to grasp. It's just never going to happen.
Yeah.
Look for signs, find simple solutions to complex problems.
Absolutely.
And let go of the way you think things are going to go, and absolutely go toward the thing that's waving its hands and being up.
Oh yeah. Everything works much more simply than we think. Yield to this simplicity. I mean, it doesn't get much easier than that, you know? Like it's all there for you, but stop trying to force or control or impose your will. And not only are amazing things going to present themselves to you, but all the answers to whatever whatever you're needing solutions to, for sure.
That's awesome. Well, thanks a lot, Renee, and we'll see everybody next time on Transurf and Chill.
Thanks, Owen.
And that's going to do it for this episode of Transurf and Chill on the flow of variations. Be sure to follow Renee on Instagram at reality_transurfing. Support the production of this show and everything else on TransurfingTV at patreon.com/BootsyGreenwood. Check out the podcast, read the books, soak it up. Thanks everybody for subscribing. Please share, enjoy,